I all of a sudden just got so inspired to come on here and talk about flow state and getting into creative flow state. And that is because feel like I'm in a flow state right now and I just want to milk it. And that is like tip number one. Once you're in it, try as hard as you can to stay in it. And P.S. this has been very hard because I've just filmed this same clip like 3 times, accidentally having my hand in front of the camera. So staying in the flow state is a challenge, but here's how I do it. One is, again, like once you're in it, stay in it. I find, and I'm sure this is like different for everyone, but I would guess that you have this feeling in you where you know kind of like the stages of the flow state and like when it's coming to its end or like when you're kind of running out of steam. And I would try to always take that to the end. I try not to ever artificially kind of abruptly stop my flow state. Things happen, life happens, like sometimes you have to be somewhere, someone needs something from you. I had a delivery come earlier, I had to like go downstairs, get up, put stuff away, and it took me out a little, but I was able to kind of like hold on to a little bit of the juice and come back into it. So if you can stay in it and kind of, if you have the time, if you know, rather than saying, okay, I'm in a flow state, but it's 4 p.m., I've been working for 2 hours, I'm just gonna stop now, even though like I still kind of like have this energy, try not to, unless again you have to be somewhere, because I really feel like flow has this, it's almost like fuel in a car or something, like there's probably a better analogy, but where it has, I don't know, like an amount to it, and sometimes it's longer or shorter, and I don't think it really is time dependent. I think it really is a feeling, because sometimes I'll be like in such a flow state and then I'll look up and I'm like an hour has gone by, and sometimes like 5 hours have gone by. So I don't think it's a matter of time, and I really think it's something that would benefit us to kind of learn to listen to and let the flow state itself kind of tell us when it's done. I know that sounds a little bit out there, but if you've had this feeling, you might know what I'm talking about, where it just kind of comes to a natural end if you let it. So if you really try not to cut it off when you're in it, I think that's really helpful. And even with like little breaks, I try not to, on like a day when I'm in the studio, I try not to take a full lunch break. I still eat because you need to eat, but I won't like take an hour, stop what I'm doing, cook, eat, watch TV, come back. Then I'm like having to start from scratch, getting back into the zone. And some people can do that, so obviously do what works for you. But like for me, I would rather take as much time as I can, go in, like grab something quick from the fridge, eat super quickly, and come back and kind of like keep my brain in the flow zone. I feel like when I was younger, like really young, when I was a kid or even a teenager, and then up until when I was working kind of more like support jobs, like 9-to-5 jobs or whatever, I just had like a natural excitement to get into the studio because it was in a way this like resistance to the other things I was doing, like school and work. And I was just like, get me in there. I have these ideas. I want to work. And that is sort of what drove me. And I never really had a problem getting into these creative states when I was younger. And then I feel like when I started doing art for a living and eventually working as a full-time artist, sometimes art can feel like a thing that you have to do, as weird as that sounds. And for me, feeling like I have to do a thing is like kryptonite for flow state. The second I feel like, oh, I have to do this, there's just like no getting into it. So I think one thing I also do sometimes is trick myself and just say like, I don't really have to do this right now. And sometimes it's true. It's not like, if I have a couple months to work on a collection, I can be like, well, it's not urgent. I don't have to do it this second. And I'll even go as far as, like, again, I said I'll watch YouTube videos or something like that. And sometimes they aren't watching videos of like other creative people. Sometimes it's watching like a gardening video or something like that, just to kind of like tell myself, you're just in chill time right now. There's nothing you have to do. Like there's no commitment here. You're just chilling out. And then I'll kind of get antsy to be like, actually, I want to go make the thing. Oh, and speaking of, when I was talking earlier about like creative people that I watch, a huge one, I think for fine artists, this like really helps me. I don't know if it's everyone's cup of tea, but watching Art 21, I think it's a PBS show, but it's, I think all of the episodes are on YouTube, or they're very easy to find. And I can watch that for like 5 minutes and immediately be like, okay, I'm going to make art. It just like really gets me in the zone. So like I said, thinking about the idea of getting in flow state was not something I ever like really had to do when I was growing up. And I think approaching it as an adult and as like this is my career, I've like sought out kind of other people's ideas, like ways that they do it. And a big one for me was Jess Lively, or her name is Bella Lively, FKA Jess Lively. Her podcast has had several like really interesting chapters and seasons to it, but there was one where it was like very heavy on what she called alignment before action, which this might be getting like a little out there hippy dippy for some people, but I think it's just psychology, but I kind of see it as the more hippy dippy out there things, which I enjoy. But anyway, this comes from an Abraham Hicks thing. If you know Abraham Hicks, you know. If you don't worry about it. But they talk about getting into alignment, and that all that means is like getting to a state of like feeling good and then taking the action you have to take. And they would say this applies to everything, like making dinner, doing your taxes, whatever. And for me, I try to apply it to creative things. And so that means kind of, again, like getting in like a good feeling state before you make art. And that is kind of like a personal choice for different artists because art is so emotional. I think some people actually thrive on making art when they're not feeling great and when they're kind of like working through emotions, and that can get you into flow state too. I'm really just talking about like what works for me. And for me, I find that when I'm feeling good, I don't have to be feeling like 10 out of 10 amazing, but when I'm just like feeling a little bit confident or like a little more relaxed, that's when I can really get into the state. So I try to think of that a lot, like alignment before action. And one thing she would always talk about doing that Abraham Hicks talks about too is making a list of what you appreciate. So it's like a gratitude list, but gratitude can be kind of like feel like a chore sometimes. And this was just kind of like a things she loved list, what Bella would do, where she would just like take out a piece of paper and write down like, I love my coffee. I love the bird outside of my window. I love the song I'm listening to. And just like get into this kind of feeling of being so just like happy to be in the moment and appreciative. And she's not a fine artist, but she would do this before she recorded her podcast or probably before like writing blog posts and things like that. And I don't necessarily like do that every time or do the appreciation list, but I think about that idea of like alignment and then action instead of just being like, I have a painting commission, I have to start it right now and it has to be good and I'm just going to do it. I'm sure that works for some people, but it's not, for me, it's not the flow state. And the thing about making art is it's not just about the end result. It's not like building a car or something where, although I'm sure if you're building a car by hand, that's flow state. But what I mean is like producing a product that's simply to sell in the world. It has to get done. That's it. This is like a process that you, I would think, enjoy and you want to enjoy it more. And so I think anything you can do to tap into the flow state and make it an enjoyable process is going to make you feel better, and I think makes the art better in the long run. Another little tip that I remember my high school art teacher saying was don't talk when you're working. And she would say, when you talk, it breaks your concentration. And I really think that's like a real thing because I've noticed that there are times maybe I'm writing something or I have a creative idea and I'm like sketching it out and someone comes in and wants to know like, oh, what time are we going to dinner? Or like, where is this thing in the kitchen? And if I can like nod or just like point or something like that, I can keep my mind on what I'm working on. But the second I have to like vocalize and say our reservation's at 7, it just like takes me out, and then I have to reset my brain, get into what I'm doing. So that's another thing which I'm sure everyone knows, and it's easier said than done, but like the more you can get into a physical space where no one's going to bother you, like a big thing is putting your phone on airplane mode or turning off certain notifications, because that will take you right out of it. And definitely this idea of not talking if you can, I think really helps. And obviously I'm talking right now, and if you're doing something that's verbal or you're singing or something like that, you use your voice. But I feel like I'm in a flow state as I'm talking, that because I'm talking on one topic that I'm very focused on. And if someone came in right now and said, hey, where's the orange juice? And I had to answer them, I would totally lose my train of thought and not be able to get back into this. So the less you can talk, I think I think the better. And my final tip for, I guess, flow state and just kind of like being excited for your creative process is something that I heard Rob Bell talk about. Rob Bell is like an author, thought leader, and so he's a writer, and so he thinks, I think, a lot about like the process of writing and what gets him into flow state. And he mentioned this little hack he does where he'll leave off like a very small unfinished task. So like at the end of the day, maybe he's written however many words or whatever, he will leave like half a sentence unwritten. I think he knows what the sentence is gonna be, but it'll be like, you know, Jimmy went to the, and the last word is like store or something, and he'll leave that off. I'm kind of like embellishing here. I don't know if that's exactly what he does, but the idea that he'll just leave off something that he knows the next time he goes in for a writing session, he can finish that and have like an instant win. So I think if you're doing things that are like more analytical and tangible, this doesn't always work because loose ends can actually give us stress, and they're kind of like open tabs in our brain. So it doesn't feel good to have like an unfinished task. But if it's a creative thing where you kind of know like, okay, I got a satisfying amount done today. I wrote these however many 100 words or whatever, and I'm leaving like 2 words undone. You can walk away with the satisfaction that you've done what you wanted to do today. You've done a good chunk, and you're going to leave that little like morsel so that the next time you come in, you have an easy win. And I think that's a huge kind of gift to your future self. So I try to do that too. What's an example? Like I do a lot of embroidery in my art. So sometimes there'll be like a shape I'm embroidering, and I, rather than like finishing the shape, tying it off, putting my scissors away, putting the thread away, and then the next time I come into my studio having to like pull that stuff out, figure out what I was working on, finish it, I leave the last little bit of that shape undone so that I can come in, I pick up the needle, and I just finish the shape. And it gives me an instant win the next time I come in, and kind of gets me in the zone a little bit faster. Because I think having something to look forward to in this instance really helps. It's kind of like that feeling I mentioned of like when I was in school or when I had more like 9-to-5 jobs, things like that. Having this carrot waiting for me when I got home, like, oh, I really want to finish that collage I was working on or something. You're kind of like giving yourself that again. And one more thing, this isn't necessarily about flow state. I guess it kind of is, but I feel like this is another interesting way to look at this is I heard on Abby Jacobson, the comedian, she used to have an art podcast where she would interview artists and like visit museums and stuff. And there was one artist she visited, I can't remember who it was, but they talked about how they have decision days and non-decision days, and or like decision making days and non-decision making days. And that like really clicked for me. I don't know if that's something that you guys experience too, where if it's a decision day, it's like, what am I going to put on this canvas? Like, what am I doing? Kind of starting from scratch. But no decision days are like, for me, you know, maybe it's that like sometimes I use masking tape to section off portions of a canvas. So sometimes it's like my canvas is prepped, my paint colors are mixed, like I've already mixed them, and my tape is laid out. So those would be, once that's done, the next day I come in, that's like a no decision day. I just go in and I start making. And that's like the easiest time for me to get into flow state. It's harder when it is those days where you're like, you have the blank canvas, or you're starting from scratch, you have no ideas. Or for me, like mixing colors is like huge decision day because I get very particular about exact shades. So that can take a lot of like mental energy. So I feel like getting into those kind of days is a little bit harder. But if you know, once you're in that zone, kind of giving yourself little, I don't know, like prizes or future you, things to look forward to, I feel like that really helps. Okay, now I can feel my flow state kind of coming to an end here. It's been a long day and it's very hot in here. So I hope those tips helped, and I'm gonna go chill out now because I think I've let my flow state come to its natural completion. So I'll see you soon.